Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wicked Encounters, where we explore just what goes bump in the night. I'm your host, Allie, and it's every horror fan's favorite time of year, October. In celebration of the spookiest month, I've compiled a list of movies that I think are worth sharing with you guys, and I'm calling it the 31 Days of Wicked Horror. We're on the 19th day of October now. Well, no, that's not true. That was yesterday. But if you've learned anything about me at this point, you'll know that I'm consistently inconsistent. You'll get all 31 movie recommendations, though, don't you worry about that. But in case it's your first time checking in, I'll tell you how I've selected these movies that I believe are worthy enough for you to watch. First off, none of the movies are going to be older than 20 years, so we can add some newer videos to our must-watch lists instead of continuing to repeat the same ones from 50 years ago. Hello, Evil Dead. Secondly, I'll be providing the synopsis and plot of the movies for those who may not like surprises or just want to know what the movies are about. There will be a slide letting you know when we're coming up on it, and I'll let you know where it's safe to click on to avoid spoilers. Also, while many of the movies are streamable, I'm not really going to provide the info on where you can watch them, because it varies based on where you live, and streaming services, once October ends, there goes most of the good horror movies. Finally, I'm going to give you some reasons as to why the movie stands out, and why I think you'll like it. So, 19th on our list is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. The Autopsy of Jane Doe is a supernatural horror film directed by Andre Øvredal and produced by 42, Imposter Pictures, and I Am Global. Set almost entirely in a small-town family-owned morgue, the film revolves around a father-son team of coroners, Tommy and Austin Tilden, who run the morgue and crematorium in their basement. I'm going to go more in depth and go over the plot of the movie now, so if you'd like to skip, you'll know where to skip to in 3, 2, 1. The story begins with the discovery of an inexplicably pristine corpse, that of a young woman dubbed Jane Doe, at the scene of a multiple homicide in a seemingly peaceful suburban home. The local sheriff, perplexed by the crime scene and needing to determine the cause of death, brings the unidentified body to Tommy and Austin late in the evening. Despite Austin's plans for the night with his girlfriend Emma, he decides to stay and assist his father with the autopsy, promising it won't take long. As they begin their examination, they quickly realize that this case is far from ordinary. Jane Doe's body appears perfectly preserved on the outside. No signs of trauma, decomposition, or external injuries. But as they begin the internal examination, they uncover a series of disturbing anomalies. For one, despite her flawless exterior, Jane Doe's wrists and ankles are shattered as though she has been bound and tortured. Her lungs show signs of severe third-degree burns, yet there are no burn marks on her skin. Her tongue has been crudely cut out, and her internal organs are scarred and blackened, indicating a history of brutal torture. Next, inside her stomach, they find a cloth with strange symbols and Roman numerals inscribed on it, along with a flower that should be impossible to find in their region. The cloth appears to have been forcefully swallowed, and the symbols resemble those used in ritualistic practices. The father and son are increasingly unnerved as they discover that these findings are physically impossible without any external evidence of trauma. As the autopsy progresses, strange occurrences begin to unfold in the morgue. The radio suddenly changes stations to play eerie music, the lights flicker, and the environment becomes increasingly oppressive. They notice that the corpses in the morgue are reacting to Jane Doe's presence, with signs of movement and noise that defy explanation. The tension escalates when Austin hears strange noises and sees disturbing visions, including the corpse of an elderly woman who was in the morgue suddenly coming to life. The elevator refuses to work, and they find themselves trapped in the morgue. As the night wears on, the power fails, and their escape routes are blocked, leaving them to face the increasingly hostile supernatural forces. The climax of the film occurs when they peel back a layer of Jane Doe's skin to find more ritualistic symbols inscribed on the inside of her flesh. They realize that Jane Doe was not a victim, but rather a witch, possibly from the 17th century, when such women were tortured and killed during witch trials. The autopsy reveals that her body is not dead in the traditional sense, but is instead a vessel for a powerful and vengeful spirit. Jane Doe was subjected to horrific rites to suppress her power, but the rituals only increased her rage and made her more dangerous in death than in life. Jane Doe's supernatural powers grow stronger as Tommy and Austin dig deeper into her secrets. The corpse seems to be manipulating their environment, controlling the dead bodies in the morgue and inducing terrifying hallucinations. In a final act of desperation, Tommy attempts to sacrifice himself to appease the spirit, but this only further empowers Jane Doe. The film ends on a bleak note with the implication that Jane Doe's curse is unstoppable, and that she will continue to inflict her wrath on anyone who comes into contact with her. Jane Doe's body is moved to another location, showing no outward signs of the horrors it contains, but her toe twitches subtly, indicating that her malevolent spirit is still very much alive. And with that, the film ends. Hey there, hi! To those who stayed, I hope you enjoyed what you heard enough to give it a watch. And for those who skipped, let me just say, you are missing out. But I bet you're wondering why it made it onto the list. What makes The Autopsy of Jane Doe stand out? Well, for starters, it has a unique setting and concept. The film is almost entirely set in the confined, claustrophobic environment of a morgue, which adds to the tension and unease. The concept of a horror film centered around an autopsy is both original and unsettling, as it taps into primal fears of death and the unknown. The contrast between the sterile clinical environment and the supernatural events creates a unique and chilling atmosphere. Psychological and supernatural horror blend. The Autopsy of Jane Doe seamlessly blends psychological horror with supernatural elements. The film starts as a straightforward forensic investigation, but as the autopsy progresses, the story slowly begins to unravel into something far more terrifying and otherworldly. This gradual shift from the rational to the supernatural heightens the sense of dread and makes the horror more impactful. Tension and atmosphere. The film is a masterclass in building tension. Director Andre Øvredal uses minimal jump scares and instead focuses on creating an atmosphere of growing unease. The use of lighting, sound, and the confined setting all contribute to a sense of claustrophobia and impending doom. The suspense is amplified by the slow reveal of Jane Doe's secrets, keeping the audience on edge throughout the entire story. Character-driven story. The relationship between Tommy and Austin is central to the film's emotional impact. Their bond, coupled with their professional dedication, makes the unfolding horror feel personal. The characters are well developed, and their reactions to the increasingly bizarre and terrifying events are grounded in realism, which makes the horror more relatable and effective. Unconventional antagonist. Jane Doe, as the film's antagonist, is one of the most unique and disturbing characters in modern horror. She is both a victim and a villain, with her presence being felt throughout the film even though she never moves or speaks. The idea of a corpse that is not just haunted, but actively malevolent, is a fresh take on the horror genre. Slow burn with a payoff. The film's pacing is deliberately slow, allowing the tension to build gradually. This slow burn approach makes the moments of horror more intense and gives the film a relentless, inescapable feel. The payoff is deeply unsettling, with a conclusion that is both unexpected and chilling. Use of practical effects. The film relies heavily on practical effects, particularly in the depiction of the autopsy and the corpse itself. This adds a layer of realism to the horror and makes the supernatural elements more disturbing. The detailed, realistic portrayal of the autopsy procedures contrasts sharply with the growing supernatural horror, enhancing the film's eerie atmosphere. Exploration of themes. The Autopsy of Jane Doe explores themes of mortality, the unknown, and the consequences of human cruelty. The film's subtext about the fear of death and the mystery of what lies beyond is subtly woven into the narrative, making it more than just a typical horror film. It also touches on the idea of revenge from beyond the grave, with Jane Doe representing the ultimate, unstoppable force of retribution. The Autopsy of Jane Doe stands out in the horror genre for its originality, atmosphere, and its blend of psychological and supernatural horror. The film's unique setting, strong performances, and the slow reveal of its central mystery make it a compelling and unsettling experience that lingers long after the credit rolls. And that's all that I have on the Autopsy of Jane Doe. But don't worry, I still have 12 more movies I'll be sharing with you. What do you think they could be? How do you feel about the Autopsy of Jane Doe being on the list? Would it make it onto yours? How do you feel about the autopsy and everything that happened during it? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to discuss horror more in depth with you all, so feel free to join the Wicked Encounters Discord group. If you like what I do and want to support me, maybe consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking that little bell icon so you know when I post. If you want to support me in other ways, why not check out my Patreon? Speaking of, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my patrons, Nakala and Beefalump. You guys are... there's no words. You guys are just the best, and that's all I can really say about you. Well, that's all I've got time for today. So remember, I'm Allie, this is Wicked Encounters, and I'll see you next time. Bye!